So today on Straight Talk, I'm happy to introduce Alonzo Adams, who's the chair of ARCSI, and he's going to share with us some concerns that he sees as far as business leaders in our industry. And as we all know, most of those watching this are business leaders, entrepreneurs, and so we look forward to this conversation. So, Alonzo, how are things going with you?
Things are going great, Jeff. Just want to say thank you for having me on your show again. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Your title, I guess, would really sum up what we're going to speak about, which is straight talk.
It is, yes. So let's do that. So what
So,
do you think?
so Jeff, the one thing is, what came across your mind when you received an email from me that was basically asking to come on your show and speak about racism that's happening in this country as well as in this industry?
So as this segment is called Straight Talk, it made me wonder, what are we going to talk about, and what can we cover that's honest, with integrity, and not offensive to other people. So in your email to me, you mentioned, in fact, an article you have coming out in the next Residential Connection article in ISSA Today. You mentioned you're a Black man and you've experienced racism your entire life. And,
Absolutely.
yep.
All levels.
And I can't say I've experienced that myself. So, when you asked me to talk about this, I'm kind of disconnected in a way. So,
Right.
so the idea here is to provide a platform where you might share some good information, some topics that those in our industry, our cleaning industry, can use. So,
Exactly. And
well,
that's
I don't
what
know if I answer your question or not, but
informative.
yeah, that's, I was like, it kind of made me nervous a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Uncomfortable
you get people.
conversation.
Yeah, you get people talking about politics, religion, and ethnic issues, and they get in trouble.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what I was thinking.
Well, you know what, which was really great to bring this about was because this is something that's going on around us, that's going on in our right in our environments, and this is going on with inside of communities as well as inside of organizations. And this is basically the elephant in the room that we don't want to discuss or talk about because it's a tough conversation. We know there are people on different sides of this issue, and some people are looking at this from the standpoint of saying, is this about the police? Is this just about George Floyd, who was killed by the officer? And this is multiple things. This is actually a ripple effect of things that has been suppressed. And when you suppress anything, it's going to be a volcano that's ready to erupt and explode. And so what we're seeing on the televisions, we're seeing on social media, we are seeing the effects of what has been suppressed for many years, what has not been discussed or talked about in the workplace, as well as even in the education systems, or even in justice itself. So this is, like you said, this is an uncomfortable conversation. A lot of this information is trying to be buried. It's being put aside that it never happened, it never occurred, and let's just forget about it and let's move forward. And that has been the problem because we have not addressed what needs to be addressed and said what needs to be said and corrected what needs to be corrected. Because as a Black man, I'm tired. I'm tired of it. As I watch Generation Z that has came up and been raised by the millennials, they're tired of it. They're tired of hearing about this. I'm tired of talking about this. And this is what we're seeing is that change needs to happen. It needs to happen fast, swiftly, and it needs to be addressed from the people that are basically being bigots, people that are allowing for these things to occur in this country, and they're being silenced and they're not speaking up when they need to speak up and being the leaders that they need to be. I'm tired of people saying that they're leaders and they understand leadership and they're not being a leader and they're not saying what needs to be said to address an issue. As a leader, you have to address issues. And that's inside of your community, that's inside your home, that's inside your business. You have to address those issues. You have to do what's uncomfortable. And And when it's uncomfortable, that means it must be the thing you should be doing because it's uncomfortable.
Okay, so a couple questions for you. Have you been involved in the protests?
I have been not out in the midst of the protest. I'm letting the people have their voice. They're demonstrating in the ways that they feel that needs to be effective, but I have not been on the streets in the midst of the protest. It has been around me in cities of Philadelphia since I'm outside of Philadelphia. I'm actually in a suburbs called Downingtown. It has happened in Downingtown as well as another community where my company Busy Bee is at, where it has been protests. These protests, especially in Westchester, has been largely white, and in Downingtown it has been a mix, as into black and white, and Hispanics, Latinos banding together, uniting to really fight for this cause.
Okay, so it's perhaps not a black and white issue,
No,
just,
it's not a black and white issue. It's not about us against the police. It's not about hating the police. It's not about hating white people. Listen, for this thing to really get to this point, and for it to have this type of effect, what we're seeing all over television, what we're seeing all over the entire world, this took white people, because this was not just going to happen from a group of black people going together and deciding to protest. This is unity. This is people together that's tired of what's happening. They're tired of what's in place now. They're fed up because they're looking at whoever they elected, their elected officials, politicians, they are not getting the jobs done. And this is where a lot of this frustration is coming from, is because change is not occurring. It's talked about, but there's no execution and there's no method to getting the job done. And there is, of course, a lack of leadership, what we're seeing at this point.
okay, let's talk about leadership, because if we're going to make changes in our industry, the cleaning industry, it starts with leadership. So in your note to me, we want to create equal opportunities, I guess, across the board. But also you mentioned the Generation Z, that they want to shake up the world and work for companies that make a difference. Now, this is a very young group. So
Yes,
what
it
are
is.
you doing? What would you tell your constituents, those in ARCSI, to do to make this happen?
You have to take time to listen. That's the key thing. You have to really take time to listen, to understand. You cannot just be you here, but you have to really listen to understand people and understand where this is coming from, where this is being driven from. When you look at Generation Z, what the companies they're looking to work for, they want companies that want to transparent. They want companies that are socially responsible. They want to feel as that they're a part of something that's gonna make a big difference in the world. They're about change. They're about revolutionizing the world. And my generation, your generation, Jeff, we have not we may have started something, but Generation Z is looking to get the job done. They're not looking just to start something, but they're looking to get the job done. They want answers. When you look at this protest, you know what's so powerful about this? It's still going on. They're relentless. The persistence is unimaginable and unbelievable, because they are not stopping. They're fighting for a cause. And that cause, they don't want to just get lip service. They want to see action. And that's what makes Generation Z so powerful. They don't care about the money. They don't care about the big house and the car. That's how I grew up. I grew up, you want the big house, you want the car. They're not interested in that. They're interested in a company that's going to make a decision to make a difference in the world. That's what they want to be a part of. That's why they're out there marching. That's why they're consistently going for miles, and they're standing on their feet for 7, 8, 10 hours. Can you imagine that? 10 hours on your feet? Could you imagine some of these people that went from Brooklyn to Manhattan? These people that's going all the way across the San Francisco Bridge? I mean, it's unbelievable for the way they're consistent in their message.
Yeah, well, I spend 10 hours a day on my feet at my stand-up desk in my air-conditioned house. So I
Exactly.
get it.
They're not out there in 85 and 95 degree weather in that heat, and some of them are out there in rainstorms.
Yeah. All right. So,
But
so
Jeff,
any final?
you know what we didn't cover, and I want to just go back for a minute because you did
Okay.
mention about businesses and about companies, you know, and looking at everything. Here's the one thing is this, you know, Black people are not saying, you know what, give us affirmative action. Okay, this was something that was started, if I'm correct, back in the Kennedy's generation or whatever. It's not about, you know, hey, give me a bone. It's about we just want a fair shot. We just want equality. You know, if you're going to say I have a shot at a promotion, let me believe that is true. Don't just again try to sell me on an idea. I need to believe that is true, that I can come to your company, I can come into any big operations, and I have an opportunity to move up. I can get up, I can get into that office, I can get into that position, and I don't have to think that I have to stay at the ground floor. When I started in the cleaning business, I was 13 years old. I went into one of these big buildings of one of these big companies. And the one thing is I noticed that there was nobody my color that was in the office. They were basically in the manufacturing plant doing the work. So I would go and I would empty the trash and I would go through and dust and clean the baths, and I would not see anybody of my color that was working behind a desk. And things changed, of course, as I have stayed in the cleaning industry, but we're still we're missing from boards, we're missing from councils, we're missing those type of opportunities to be a part to make a real difference. And we have to not just say like Apple gave $100 million, and they want to give this to Black Lives Matter. And it's not just about giving money, it's giving equal opportunities. So Apple could be out there and say, we're going to give 100 million, but Apple, we need for you not to just have people of color being salesmen. Let them be a part of that big 70% that's all white and it's not colored, that's in those top positions of those companies. From Google to Apple to Facebook, you do not have enough color in those positions.
So you mentioned your past. Would you say that if you were to walk into a business now, things would be different for you?
No, you know, because here's how this is how systemic racism works. It's inherited. It's in us. It's the things that we basically believe what is the right thing to do. I remember it was a few years ago that I walked into a BMW dealer. And I was in that BMW dealer walking around for about a good 10, 15 minutes. I'd probably give you about 15 minutes on that. And if you've been in a car dealership, it's very hard to be in there for 5 minutes and you're not getting swamped by people. And especially in a BMW, you know, where the price point of these cars, they want to sell these luxury vehicles. So I'm in there for about 15 minutes, not one person, not one salesperson that was sitting at their desk decide that say, can I help you? So you know what I did? I left out that door, Jeff, and I drove 25 minutes away from there, went into another BMW dealer. Soon as I walked in the door, sir, can we help you? And you know what I did, Jeff? I bought one of the most expensive BMWs in that place because I was just to the fact that I felt so disappointed that I had to stand for 15 minutes and not one person's going to come and ask, can we help you, sir? You know,
Yeah.
so
So what it took was someone just to pay attention to you as a person.
that's Jeff, that's the problem, the whole thing in our companies. This is a whole thing that I'm looking at as in leadership. You know what? Just again, pay attention. We're not asking for that. You need to stroke a check. You need to do these different things. The bottom line is take a moment to listen to understand, because the history that has occurred is being buried. The history that has occurred, most white people don't even know or don't even care to know. You know, I remember as being a child, and one of the most powerful miniseries ever, Roots. I don't know if you saw that, Jeff, but Roots, one of the most powerful miniseries ever, one of the most watched miniseries in history. And my parents let me see that. It was powerful, it was provoking, it was eye-opening, but it was one of the most watched. But I noticed when I went to school, that most of those white kids didn't even watch it. Their parents didn't let them see that because of the honesty, the brutal honesty of it, the cruelty of it. And they had no knowledge about these things taking place, even like myself, because these are things that's not talked about in our school systems. Basically, what they're doing about Black history, they're doing anything about what occurred with Black people. They know about Martin Luther King. And the one thing we know about him, here's a guy that had a dream, right? This is what we know about him. We know about Rosa Parks. She didn't want to get out her seat on a bus, but it's way deeper than that. And it goes farther back than that, where you can really understand why we're facing these issues. And we're still talking about the problems that we were talking about 70, 80 years ago today.
Yeah, you mentioned Roots and the TV miniseries. I read the book, Alex Haley.
Yes.
Didn't have to Google that.
Big book too.
About this big.
Yes.
And I read it and I enjoyed it, but it was eye-opening for sure.
Yes,
And when we're disconnected in a way, you read that stuff, you see the TV series, you don't feel it like others do.
that's true.
So that's just honest, straight talk.
Yes, it is. And I appreciate that honesty as well. The one thing is too, Jeff, about feeling it, sometimes you have to go to where the people are to really feel and understand. So let's put it this way. I live in a development where there's not any colored people here. There's none here in my development. For me to really understand what goes inside of Philadelphia, I have to go and be inside of some of those areas. And I've had opportunities to go through some of those schools and see the conditions and see the low paid teachers, to see the books that they have, their workbooks that's ripped apart. The spine of them is gone. How they don't have computers. They don't have the luxuries or benefit that my child has out here in the suburbs. And when you look at what's going on in places like that, the school system, New York, wherever, across the country, there's a lot that's needed there. It really is, because it's not equal. So it's not just like you can go get an education. It's not like your kids go into a private school and they have, these companies that show up, the big businesses that's saying, hey, listen, you got an opportunity to come work for our company. They're not seeing that. They don't feel they have the opportunity to go to a top college. So it takes people that are of color and people that's not color to go out and do their community services and go into those areas and hear the stories and see what they go to and speak to them. I was surprised they even watch the children of how many buses and subways they have to take just to get to school, and the dangers that they're placed in every single day just to go to school to get a simple education. And then you hear some of them get caught in crossfires of gunfire and get shot, and some of their friends have been killed. So it's a total different story, and until we fully understand it completely, I think it makes it real difficult to have a discussion with people that don't take time to learn others in other cultures.
Well, good stuff. And I appreciate the straight talk comments from you. And I invite everyone who's watching this to find Alonzo's article called We the People in the next issue of I Say Today, which is going to be in print and online. And Alonzo, feel free to share this interview with others as well.
Absolutely.
Let's cover this again. Let some traction take place, and let's regroup and have another discussion.
Terrific. Thank you, Jeff, for having me. And again, it's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, absolutely.